Suppose you've had the chance to read my blog posts. In that case, you might already be familiar with the struggles I faced due to my difficult upbringing with parents who exhibited narcissistic behaviors. Their constant lies, manipulation, and use of fear to control me left me yearning for affection that was never given. Despite my parents' lack of love and affirmation, it's now 2024, and I find myself living a fulfilling life, buoyed by a deep-rooted faith in Jesus. How did I reach this point against such odds, and what have been my greatest struggles so far? Ever since I was young, my faith in Jesus has played a pivotal role in shaping my life. It all began when my grandmother gifted me a children's Bible, which laid the foundation for my spiritual journey. Despite the contrasting portrayals of Jesus across different denominations, I was always confident his primary focus was to lead us to the Father rather than drawing attention to himself. With a father like mine, one might assume it would be incredibly challenging for me to relate to God the Father. My father, a troubled man, struggled to provide the love and support that I longed for. Despite this, I found solace in observing my classmates' relationships with their fathers, realizing that not all paternal figures were like mine. Though I yearned for the warmth and understanding that others experienced, I knew I was bound to my unique circumstances. When I realized the primary focus of Jesus was to guide us toward the Father, my perception of God as a father underwent a significant change. It became akin to the hypothetical scenario of being adopted by the father of one of my classmates. I would have eagerly welcomed the opportunity to have a loving and caring father through adoption, but I would also remain acutely aware that he was not my biological father. If a classmate's father had indeed adopted me, I would have undoubtedly gained a fantastic father figure. Nonetheless, the recognition that I was not his biological child would always underscore a sense of being one step removed. The portrayal of the spirit of adoption in modern Christianity, as depicted in the letter to the Romans, led me to ponder the idea of embracing the opportunity to be welcomed into God's family. The notion of being enveloped by the love and guidance of a divine father figure was an enticing prospect. However, the concept of being considered an adopted child rather than a natural-born one presented a complex challenge in my ability to form a deep, unshakable connection with God as a father. I felt distanced from a direct, intrinsic child-parent relationship with God. It was the inherent difference between being an adopted child and a biological one that emphasized the dilemma I grappled with. Of course, as we all know, God does not have children. Instead, we humans complicate things by using terms and expressions such as a child of God, the spirit of adoption, and so on, terms and phrases that have a different meaning for us than what they mean in the Bible. I understood at an early age that when the Bible speaks of the spirit of adoption and being grafted into the natural olive tree, it does not refer to biological children but to Gentiles who come to faith in Christ and are grafted into the tree of Israel. Most Christian denominations portrayed this in one of two ways. Gentiles were either grafted in as second-hand citizens of Israel, or they had replaced Israel altogether. I could never accept the idea that Gentiles had replaced Israel. So, even though we are no longer speaking of biological children, the sense of disconnect of not being part of God's original plan still existed for me and made it very difficult to see myself as a child of God even though I believed in Jesus. Soon, I realized that the solution to my problem had been there all along, but I just hadn't seen it. I had the opportunity to familiarize myself with the Bible's contents before becoming a Pentecostal by reading through the Bible several times a year. Surprisingly, I never encountered the notion that the Old Testament was considered irrelevant for Christians, nor was I informed that it was deemed too difficult to comprehend or impractical to follow. I embraced the belief that the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, held significance for me as a Christian in the present day. Even though I acknowledged that certain scriptures, particularly those related to the laws and regulations for the temple, were applicable only within specific contexts, I valued the Old Testament as a meaningful part of my faith journey. After I embraced Pentecostalism, I was taught that as New Testament Christians in the New Covenant, we no longer needed to follow the Old Testament. So, for many years, I focused only on reading the New Testament. However, during my time at Ansgar University College, I had to study the Old Testament. It was then that I found scriptures challenging the idea that the concept of being grafted in was only introduced by Paul. I discovered that this concept actually existed in the book of Isaiah. Both Paul and Isaiah conveyed the same message. A foreigner who chose to follow in the footsteps of Ruth should be treated as if they were born in Israel. In Isaiah, it even states that it is a sin to treat a Gentile who joins himself to Israel and the God of Israel as a Gentile. He or she is to be treated just as the natural-born Israelite. This revelation led me to realize that there is no mention in the Bible of Gentiles who are grafted in being considered second-class citizens, nor does it suggest that Gentiles have replaced Israel. It was a profound moment for me when I realized that I had been misinformed from the pulpit. Upon deep reflection, it struck me that being adopted by God, receiving the spirit of adoption, and being grafted into the olive tree carried immense significance. As I delved deeper into understanding this concept, I realized that interpreting Paul's words in conjunction with Isaiah's words was essential. This process unveiled the profound truth that by committing to follow the teachings of Jesus and serving the Father of Jesus, the God of Israel, I was immediately and wholeheartedly embraced as a son of God, standing on equal ground with any Jew or Israelite living in Israel who had also chosen this path. This revelation shed light on the inclusive and egalitarian nature of spiritual adoption and the sense of belonging to the family of God. This realization made it much easier for me to establish a deep and personal connection with Him. I understood that in His eyes, I was not a second-class citizen. Rather, I was just as much His child as anyone else who had been serving Him since birth. This newfound understanding enabled me to embrace the teachings of Jesus with ease, allowing me to address Jehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus, as my loving and caring Father, my Abba. This is a significant, although not the only, reason behind why I am able to live a fulfilling life, despite facing challenges during my childhood and enduring abuse. I recognize that by sharing this, I may be raising thought-provoking questions for those who still hold strong to church dogmas and traditions. I can assure you that there was a period in my life when I grappled with these same questions. The answers to these questions represent another crucial factor in my ability to live a satisfying life today. However, I plan to delve deeper into this in a future blog post.